Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel for another Project Zomboid video. In this one, I wanted to take a look at some of the extra maps that you can play with the help of Steam Workshop, how they work and which ones I'd recommend for any Project Zomboid enthusiast. Now, if you do find this video helpful or just entertaining, consider dropping it a like and subscribing to the channel to help support my content. I also stream every day on Twitch over at twitch.tv/MrAtomicDuck if you want to see some Project Zomboid live or just ask me some questions about the game. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk very briefly about map mods and how they work. Project Zomboid already has a pretty large map, but if you feel like you need something different or want to expand the playable area, you can download additional maps via the Steam Workshop. Once downloaded, just head to the mods menu in-game and enable whichever ones you want. Some collide with each other, so make sure to check the map you're using isn't going to cause issues with the ones you already have. Most of these map mods actually add to the playable area, simply snapping onto the existing map, but there are one or two which change the location you're playing in entirely and give you a new area to play in altogether. So I wanted to start with the map that I enjoy most at the moment, and one that I think all Project Zomboid players should try before they put the game down, and that's Raven Creek. This map is simply put a masterpiece. Sure, there are some larger built-up areas in other map mods, but none quite hit the spot like Raven Creek does. Raven Creek is a sprawling metropolis with high-rise apartments, nightclubs, huge warehouses, and beachside resorts. This map mod has everything you could want in a city location, and it just gives you a completely different experience to what you might have had elsewhere. Going up inside the apartment blocks and walking past failed barricades from the residents is incredibly harrowing, not to mention the huge survivor stronghold in the middle of the city, which has used rows of buildings, fences, car wrecks, and shipping containers to create a safe zone, which has ultimately fallen to the infected. Before we move on to the next map, there is one more unique property about this map that I want to mention. In a lot of maps, your spawn point is either the same every time or is completely random based on where you've chosen. With Raven Creek, your spawn point is actually determined by the occupation you choose. For example, the police officer will spawn just outside of the police station in the middle of the city, and the lumberjack will spawn at a large house and a smaller cabin out in the woods nearby to the city. I know this won't be for everyone, but I just absolutely love this setup. It adds an element of storytelling to the game and gives you a different experience that you can actually control with every playthrough. Raven Creek isn't on the Project Zomboid map you can find online, so I'm including a link in the description of this video to a downloadable image of the map. I'd strongly recommend downloading it as it's a very high quality image and thus takes quite some time to load in a browser. Alright, now that I'm done getting all excited about my favourite pick of the lot, let's look at some other maps which are definitely worth trying. Some of these I'll only touch on briefly as they're only small additions to the current map and thus not worth dedicating a bunch of time to, but is still worth giving them a look. Sherborg is a map that doesn't attach to any areas of the existing playable map and drops you into a new environment entirely. Now, it's based in Normandy in France and is a complete change of pace to the usual Project Zomboid. From elaborately built chateaus to harbours and farmland, it gives you a very different experience to Kentucky, and one that you might find yourself enjoying if you fancy something new. You can decide to spawn randomly, or you can choose a bit of a scenario-based spawn which is set around unique characters with a bit of a backstory if you want to follow that in a bit more of a pathway setup. It's definitely worth a try, especially if you're getting a bit bored with the standard map. Note, however, that this map does require a couple of additional mods when subscribing to it on Steam, including one that adds yachts to the game, and whilst I haven't got the chance to try these out just yet, seems like a nice addition when it comes to trying something completely new. Now, the next one I'd like to mention is on a bit of a smaller scale, but it is a pretty cool expansion to an already playable town in Project Zomboid. The West Point expansion adds a whole new area to West Point, including a hospital, some storage bins, an appliance store, and plenty of construction areas to choose from. It feels completely natural and, to be honest, like it should have been a part of West Point in the first place. Just adds a bit more of a reason to go and check out this area of the map, which is usually just residential areas and a few shops. On the Project Zomboid map, you can actually find this not quite snapped onto the existing map, but it does have its own section so you can still track your movement. And I'm going to leave a link to that map if you're not familiar what I'm talking about in the description. Lake Ivy Township is another one that's worth checking out if you feel like you need some new residential areas to explore. This map inserts just to the west of Muldraw and comes with plenty of lakeside multi-story housing, a new gas station, and just general purpose stores that you'd want to check out on those supply runs. Lake Ivy doesn't do anything outstandingly different, but it's a solid expansion to the existing map that's worth considering purely for the additional playable area. Next up is Over the River, which, as the name suggests, attaches a bridge to the existing playable area of West Point and introduces a new playable area to the north, which is on the other side of the river. It can only be accessed by this large bridge that is inserted at West Point. It's a cool little dynamic to add to the game, and it's got some incredibly useful areas to hit for the supplies too, including a military complex with plenty of military and medical loot if you can brave the zombie hordes to get to it. There's a shipping area, a logging camp, and even a survivor stronghold built within a stadium as well, which is incredibly cool if you go and see it. Overall, well worth a download and not too far from an existing spawn point either, so quite easy to access. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is one that's a bit of a controversial one among the Project Zomboid community, but one that I think is worth checking out all the same. Grapeseed is a town that's just to the west of the existing Rosewood area and has some pretty interesting locations to check out, from arcades and stores selling musical instruments to cannabis growing safe houses and hunting stores. The twist to this location is that it features a lot of stores which are named after Project Zomboid content creators, so you might see some familiar names in there if you like to watch YouTube or Twitch. I've even got my own coffee shop in there, Atomic Coffee, which is super cool of the makers of the map to include this sort of thing, even for smaller content creators like myself. The one downside of this map for me is the spawn system. This map spawns you in the same location every time you play if you choose it as your spawn point, and hands you a lot of items that you'll need right from the get-go. If you're struggling with the vanilla experience, then this might be one to try, but otherwise I'd suggest spawning in Rosewood and making your way over to Grapeseed naturally instead of spawning there, but again, that's just my preference for this one. Fort Redstone is up next, introducing a heavily fortified military area to the west of Rosewood. This area of the map contains an absolute plethora of military items and can see you well geared from a single visit, so I'd only recommend introducing this one if you're looking to turn your playthrough into a shoot 'em up, or just want to try some new weapons included in various mods. It's a great location to go and explore, but it can make your playthrough vastly different to the intended experience of Project Zomboid, so I'd advise caution with this one. It's worth a look all the same. Now, last on our list is Bedford Falls, which adds a pretty large-scale town to the southeast side of the map, including a military complex and several residential areas. It's considered a bit of a difficult location for new players and comes packed with zombies most of the time, but adds a pretty substantial area to the existing map and some pretty unique buildings that you might not be able to find in any other map mods I've listed so far. So I don't want to give too much away with this one, but it's another one that snaps easily onto your existing map and is definitely worth a look if you get the chance. That's all from me in this one, folks, but I'd definitely be interested to hear if there's any other maps you guys have tried for Project Zomboid that are worth downloading. I know there's a whole bunch of them out there, so if I've missed any, be sure to drop them in the comments for other players. Once again, feel free to drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for plenty more Project Zomboid videos. Have a great day, and I will see you all in the next one.